Okay, let's jump right into this explainer and go ahead and shatter a very common illusion. We all tend to think clean drinking water is just a simple automatic guarantee. You twist a handle and fresh, clean water flows out. But the truth? It is literally anything but simple.
We absolutely take that twist of the tap for granted. But the reality is that there is an incredibly complex, high-stakes operation running silently in the background 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're talking about massive financial capital, cutting-edge science, and just constant, unending vigilance required to keep that water flowing safely into your home.
To truly understand this hidden world, we're pulling back the curtain using the authoritative SASB standards for water utilities and services. If you're not familiar, this is essentially the strict accounting rulebook that holds utilities accountable for their financial, operational, and environmental sustainability. It's the ultimate benchmark for the invisible industry that keeps us all healthy.
All right, let's start with Section 1, the tap water illusion. Expectation versus reality. See, when you expect pristine water on demand, the utility's reality is this crazy high-wire balancing act to actually make that happen for you. They're working around the clock to ensure that the water doesn't just look clear, but actually conforms to incredibly strict health regulations, all while hitting really demanding supply metrics. Flawless execution isn't just a nice-to-have goal, it's a daily, non-negotiable mandate.
Moving on to Section 2, treating and monitoring our water, the invisible investment.
Listen, utilities don't just stick a pipe in the ground or a river and route it directly to your house. No way. They invest heavily right on the front end to protect those water sources from contamination in the first place. Then they design and maintain these highly complex, comprehensive treatment processes. And finally, they conduct rigorous, routine monitoring of the finished water output to make absolutely sure it is safe before it ever enters the distribution network.
And they also have to look to the future. It's not just about filtering out the classic pollutants anymore. Today, they are proactively monitoring for what we call contaminants of emerging concern. We're talking about pharmaceutical residues, flame retardants, and even endocrine-disrupting hormones that are making their way into raw water sources. To combat this, utilities are forced to pour money into advanced, incredibly expensive treatment technologies, things like ozonation and ultraviolet disinfection, just to keep up with these new threats to human health.
Which brings us to Section 3, Threats from Natural Disasters, Nature's Growing Antagonist.
So, SASB actually defines a 100-year flood zone as an area with a 1% chance of flooding in any given year. Now, I know that sounds like a bit of geographical trivia, but it is actually a crucial sustainability metric. Investors and regulators use this exact definition to evaluate the physical vulnerability of a utility's treatment capacity. Because think about it, if a treatment plant goes underwater, the entire system fails.
And extreme weather is throwing everything it has at this infrastructure. Intense precipitation can totally overwhelm systems, leading to sanitary sewer overflows. Forest fires completely alter the chemical makeup of water sources. You've got rising sea levels threatening coastal plants, and earthquakes that can instantly devastate the aqueducts and canals we desperately rely on for water transport. Which leads us to a very stressful time frame: 24 hours. Under strict guidelines, this is the regulatory metric for notifying customers during the most serious, acute contamination events. If a natural disaster or an infrastructure failure causes a severe risk to human health, the utility has a maximum of 24 hours to broadcast that warning to the public. It is a high-stress, race-against-the-clock scenario. When nature does overwhelm the system, or when the infrastructure unexpectedly fails, the result is unplanned service disruptions. We're talking complete water shutoffs, really severe low-flow restrictions, and boil water advisories. This is exactly what it looks like when that invisible shield breaks down, and a macro-level crisis becomes a very tangible reality right there in your kitchen sink.
Let's look at Section 4, the high cost of failure. When the system breaks down.
Failing to deliver safe water doesn't just mean a few unhappy phone calls from customers. It sparks an absolute cascade of failure. The goal is consistent, safe water, right? But missing that goal means utilities face massive regulatory fines, incredibly expensive litigation, sudden emergency capital expenditures to fix the mess, and a complete reputational collapse in the eyes of the public. Digging even deeper into the SASB source material, the ultimate stakes of poor water quality management are, quite frankly, catastrophic for the business. Beyond just the fines, they face formal government enforcement, judicial actions, and the devastating loss of their social license to operate. If a utility repeatedly fails to protect human health, governments can step in and execute an actual asset seizure, or just take over the entire business entirely.
The financial and operational risks are absolute.
So how do they survive this? That's Section 5, Securing Our Water Future, Adapting for Resilience. To survive the growing impacts of climate change and the rise of those emerging contaminants we talked about, utilities can't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They have to engineer absolute resilience into their systems. This means diversifying water sources so they aren't reliant on just one vulnerable river. It involves meticulous contingency planning, investing heavily in redundant backup systems for service continuity, and managing water withdrawals sustainably to align with long-term watershed goals. It really is a massive, invisible operation, holding back a tide of risks every single day. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought to reflect on. Considering the enormous unseen investments in treatment, the growing threats from climate disasters, and the truly catastrophic costs of failure, what is the true value and the true vulnerability of the water flowing from your local tap? Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and remember to keep questioning what goes on behind the scenes.